Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Executive Director of Reaching Out, Matt Kidd.
I feel like we're at like the Southwest Oscars. It's kind of cool. Before I get started, I actually want to thank two groups of people and reflect on one thing. So the first group that I'd like to thank is the companies that support us, the companies that make this conference and everything we do possible year-round. So let's give them a round of applause. They truly are invested in you, both as the LGBT community, but also as MBAs. Those who are not here, we can't say as much for them. So again, thank you very much. The second group that I'd like to acknowledge is every year at the ROMBA conference, we have a student leadership team. This team puts together the content that you saw this morning and that you'll see throughout the rest of the conference. So I would like to ask the 11 members of this year's team to stand up so that we can acknowledge you and thank you. The conference has been spectacular so far, so let's give them a round of applause. Please stand up. And then the third thing I'd actually like to reflect on is Reaching Out has a history that now we're at our 19th conference. It's 18 years. There's a double up year there. But the reason we exist is because of our corporate partners, because of the students who've been part of our story, but also because of some administrators, some faculty, some folks who are at the schools that you're coming from. And I'd just like to acknowledge one person who passed away earlier this year. Who happened to come from the business school that I graduated from, which was NYU Stern. His name is Kyle Cunningham. And without people like Kyle, this conference, this organization really never would have achieved the momentum that we have. And so I would just like to take 10 seconds here just to acknowledge Kyle, number one, but also those administrators and those who support you and all of us who've gone through business school in the past. So let's take about 10 seconds here, please. Okay, thank you. All right, so let's talk about what's going on in the Reaching Out world. This is my 4th year on the stage as Executive Director. I've been around and involved since 2009 at this point in some capacity. And the organization, even in that period, has changed quite a bit. I think about 2013, the first time I was up here as Executive Director. And at the time, really all we did was the conference and a little bit of a leadership summit that we still do. And at the time, that speech was addressing what we lovingly called at the time straight crashers. And that was a problem that the organization was facing a little bit. Fast forward now 3 years later, and that really actually is no longer much of a problem. We actually thank and celebrate our kind of non-LGBT peers who are here with us. You guys truly are allies. I've read many of your applications myself. I've heard a lot of stories from your peers at your clubs. And so we thank you. And the interesting thing is because of what we did to kind of cut down on that problem, we've really seen a community grow quite a bit. And so we now have this robust club affiliate program that has 52 schools as part of it. And we're seeing schools start clubs that never in a million years before would have even thought about it. It makes it necessary, it makes it important. And it's through that club affiliate program, through things that we've added on. So for example, last year we took over another program called Friend Factor. And Friend Factor urges these clubs to engage not just in social events, but in events that impact the community, events that bring together each other and educate LGBTs and non-LGBTs alike and get them involved in their community. And so seeing this happen on all of your campuses, for me, has been really pretty remarkable. We then kind of started talking about what we could do in terms of the demographics in this room. So one thing that is definitely still true is if you look around the room, you're going to see probably about 70% of you are males, probably cisgender males. And we are not seeing as many LGBTQ women as we would like. So one initiative we started about 3 years ago and we're still investing very heavily in is something called Out Women in Business. We have a standalone conference. We have a half day at this conference, and we're going to start some regional activities, which I'll talk about in a second. But the whole idea behind this is we're bringing together LGBTQ women who are in business. They may not have an MBA, they may, whatever it might be, essentially to create a more robust, visible community. And we are starting to see applications increase for LGBTQ women at business school. So we are seeing some progress there, and it's really interesting to see that. So. We started looking about how we could engage people outside of the conference, and one of the first things that we launched about 4 years ago now was a series of Trek programs, which have become increasingly popular. I've met a lot of you on Treks over the last 3 years or so, and this program will continue and continues to expand. We'll actually be adding our first kind of non-recruiting Trek, so we're going to be going to South by Southwest in March, so hopefully you can join us for that. We've also gone internationally. So 2 years ago, with the support of McKinsey, we launched the first Reaching Out Brazil. And the idea behind this was a little bit of recruiting, like the ROMBA conference is, but something that we've seen play out over the last 2 years is that this conference has actually become a really interesting feeder. It's bringing a lot of LGBTQ people who are from Brazil into US programs. And so that's something that's really exciting to us and we want to see continue to grow. And with that in mind, next year, we'll be going to Asia Pacific with a conference in Hong Kong. But probably the program that we've already launched that I am most proud of, and I think is the most exciting thing, is the Reaching Out Fellowship. So this is a program that we started talking to schools about 3 years ago. We currently have 2 classes of fellows. So the class of 2017 has 25 fellows. The class of 2018 has 44 fellows. And we already have 35 schools signed up for the following application cycle. Here's the thing that I really like about this. The economic impact of this program is pretty amazing. For the class of 2018, for each of their 2 years while they're in business school, they'll be collectively receiving over $1 million in scholarship funding. So that's where we are today, but I'm going to take a second to talk about where we're going. So many of you are familiar with Reaching Out, the brand, what we do, and you know, frankly, we think we can start pushing a little bit more into people's careers. So I think the opinion out there from a lot of folks is, I came to ROMBA conference as a student, and that's it, we're done, I'm never coming back, whatever that might look like. The reality is, Reaching Out as an organization should serve you from the time you're applying to business school to when you're in business school to continue on as you're a professional. And that is our plan going forward, and that starts as we rebrand the organization's look and feel a little bit. So we're getting rid of the people decapitated by the rainbow. And you will see us roll out a new brand as we go into the celebration of the 20th ROMBA conference next year. So a lot of the activities that we're going to be doing around alumni in particular lead up to that next conference. The first thing, which has been in soft launch, which is now officially launched, and I would encourage all of you to go on to, is Reaching Out Connect. Reaching Out Connect will serve as a new portal for all LGBT MBAs and higher degree candidates. It is both for students and professionals, and it is something that you'll be able to continue to use for years to come, to connect with each other, to connect with recruiters. So it will be a very robust tool. You can do it on your phones right now, I won't mind. But this is something that we're very excited to see. The other thing that we'll be rolling out are regional events. So we will be piloting regional events over the next 12 months, specifically in Boston, New York, Chicago, San Francisco, Los Angeles, and Seattle. So if you're in one of those cities, regardless of whether you're a student or alum, look for those events. They'll come really in about 2 formats, one of which is speaker or content based and one of which is networking based. Some of them will be a bit more targeted. So I talked about Out Women in Business. Out Women in Business will incorporate itself into these regional events that we're doing. And then probably the biggest impact with what people know of reaching out, or the ROMBA conference in particular, is this is going to impact the conference next year and most likely going forward. So next year is the 20th ROMBA conference, and with that we'll be launching a special track specifically for LGBT MBA professionals. That track will run from Friday night all the way through a 20th anniversary gala on Saturday. So there will be a reason for alumni to come back at the conference moving forward, and you will see more of your peers who are graduates of the program like you. So really what this does is it brings us together and it makes us more of a cohesive community. And this is where I stop and I start kind of getting a little preachy, and I talk about why this all matters beyond kind of getting a job, growing your career, something along those lines. It sometimes feels like we've had so much progress over the last even 5 years that, you know, what else is there to do? And the reality is there's a lot. If you look at non-discrimination laws or the lack thereof, there are still quite a number of states that offer no or little protection for LGBT people, and it's even worse if you're part of the T community. If we look at out women, which we were talking about before, if you are an LGBTQ woman and you put an indicator that you're part of that community, you are 30% less likely to get a job interview. And that's pretty frightening. And so we need this community really to support each other. And so while it may feel for people that look like this, that things are pretty good. Sorry, Ian, you're the token. The reality is that it feels pretty good. I mean, I look at my own story. Earlier this year in June, I was lucky enough to get married to who's now my husband. And we'd been together for 13 years, which is pretty crazy. That same night in Orlando, 49 people were murdered. This is something that will forever sit with me, that this same night that was so joyous, that was such a great part of my life, for these people, they encountered so much hate at the same time. And the other thing that's really striking to me is if you look at these people, you'll see that the vast majority of them are black or brown. And this is a part of our community that those who look like me often take for granted. And these are important stories to tell. If we look at the trans community, it's even worse. We know last year over 22 trans people were murdered. The numbers are just as bad this year and in fact look to be even worse. And so it's time for us to think about, as the people in this room who will go on to power, money, and influence, how can we affect this? How can we change this? And how can we play a role in that? And so that's why I asked our speaker this afternoon to join us. So Darnell Moore is a writer and community organizer, and he certainly has a point of view of what it feels like to be somebody who does not look like this, and has some opinions about how we might be able to support communities that may not look like us, but definitely need our support. And so with that, I welcome Darnell Moore.